The medical and scientific worlds understand that at least 2 out of 3 people will contract STIs throughout their lifetime. So, if you fear that you're going to be one of those people, if you've got a few bumps down there that aren't making sense, I'm here for you. And thank you so much for coming back to my 3rd episode of Sex Ed You Wish You Had, with me, of course, Engeni Saidi. Today we're talking everything STI related, right? We'll be talking about a couple things, so stay tuned right till the end of the video. We're going to be talking about where STIs, the study of STIs originated from. We're going to be talking about the most common STIs we experience in South Africa. Then we're going to talk about the ways that STIs are transmitted through populations. We're going to analyze modes of prevention of STIs. And then we're going to talk about a few truths and myths about STIs. So I've got a couple things I need to discuss with you guys, and it's very important that you stay right to the end because there are very key pieces of information that I hope you guys can get from my video. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, let's get right into the video. So where did STIs, or the study of STIs, come from, right? The first time STIs were studied were in 1494, right, when the French invaded Naples during the Italian War. There was a massive outbreak of syphilis and a lot of soldiers died. And of course, things that are linked to war obviously get taken very seriously, and that's when STIs were first studied. So what STIs will you encounter as a South African in 2021 and of course moving forward, right? To understand STIs in our country, we have to understand the different types of STIs. Now there are 3 different types of STIs that we as human beings will encounter, right? The first is bacterial, the second is viral, and the third is parasites, right? Now, to understand that there are different types of STIs, this gives us the understanding that there are different ways of treating these STIs, right? Not every STI is exactly the same. And newsflash, not every STI can be blocked or defeated or prevented by a condom. So let's get right into it, right? Let's talk about bacterial sexually transmitted infections, right? Let's just get one thing straight. Bacteria isn't inherently bad, right? There's a lot of bacteria on your body as we speak, a thin layer of microbiome that keeps your body in check. And this is actually very necessary for life to take place. But bacteria becomes an issue when it is either too much or too little. Now let's talk about the bacteria within our genital areas and how that bacteria is able to propagate, right? Bacteria needs a few things to live. Firstly, it needs water because it's a living organism. It then needs food, and then it also needs protection and a way to adhere to things so that it can grow. So if we look at the vagina and the penis, right? These are enclosed spaces. Assuming you're uncircumcised. These are enclosed spaces, so they give a lot of variance for different types of bacteria to grow because there's a lot of moisture and there's a lot of food, glucose in these areas for the bacteria to grow. So that's okay, right? The issue becomes if there's too much, and this can happen through a sexually transmitted infection such as bacterial vaginosis, right? But bacterial vaginosis can also develop from an individual because the bacteria is thrown out of balance by, for example, the pH being out of balance, or there's too much glucose in that area. So that is our first STI that we're going to talk about, bacterial vaginosis. The second one is chlamydia, right? It's also a bacterial infection, and about 7.1% of South Africa's population has contracted chlamydia. Thirdly, we're going to talk about syphilis. Now, syphilis is a very interesting bacterial infection because it is actually the only bacterial infection that is transmitted from skin to skin contact. Now, what this means is even if you're wearing a condom, you can still contract syphilis. And that's, I guess, the scary part about it. But there are ways that I will discuss further on the video, so stay tuned, that will show you how to get around this issue. Lastly, we're talking about gonorrhea, right? Gonorrhea doesn't really present itself in women, but in men, it is very clear through the enlargement of your testicles. So if your testicles are a bit large, you probably get that checked out. So now I'm going to talk about a few signs and symptoms of STIs, right? STIs, especially bacterial STIs, present themselves through sores and bumps in the genital area. And these are numerous sores and bumps because, sometimes the human body is different. You could have an ingrown hair. Now, that doesn't mean you have an STI. That's just your body's variation, right? So numerous is the key word. If there's a lot of bumps causing rashes, bleeding, open ulcerations, that's when it's probably time, actually past due time, to get checked out. Go to your nearest medical professional because the earlier you start treatment, the better. I cannot emphasize that enough. A few things that are very important to also notice is that there is discharge associated with infections, right? If your discharge is, there's also natural discharge, but if your discharge is either yellowish and has an off smell from the penis or the vagina, you should really get that checked out. Next, we're going to move on to viral infections, right? Now, viral infections are different from bacterial infections is that they don't show many physical symptoms. They do, but not as many as bacterial infections. Yet, they can be harder to get rid of because because of the way they reproduce within your body, right? Let's talk about, the first one I want to talk about is HPV, right? Human papilloma virus. Now, this is a very interesting virus because it's estimated that over half the world's population has HPV as we speak. Now, HPV can either remain dormant within your body, you won't even know for your whole life, or it can be show small symptoms such as genital warts, which can be dealt with. HPV can also be extremely dangerous, especially to women, right? HPV has been shown, the extreme strains of it have been shown to cause cervical cancer. So HPV is not to be played with. Next, we're going to talk about herpes, right? Herpes shows itself through genital warts and warts on the mouth, and it's very similar, in fact, to HPV and can be treated as such. Next is hepatitis B and HIV. Now, I paired these two together because it's very important to understand that you might not even see any physical symptoms of these two viruses. That's just how they operate. But over time, suddenly you get really sick and you don't know why. And these sicknesses build and build and build. I'm talking about real deep sickness, real colds and flu that have you knocked out for days and lead to secondary infections such as tuberculosis. That type of level sickness. So the way to kind of see these early is your lymph nodes. They're very important. If your lymph nodes around your body are enlarged, your neck, your pelvic areas, your armpits, that's when you can suspect that there's a large infection and could be one of these two sexually transmitted infections. Now, what's important about viruses is to understand that they are quite hard to get rid of. You can't use an antibiotic because antibiotics are really suited for bacteria, right? You can't use, it's like, it doesn't make sense to fight a virus with a bacterial antidote, understand? So they are harder to get rid of, but you can get rid of them, right? Let's talk about the modes of transmission. Now we've spoken about the different types of STIs. We'll talk about how these STIs are transmitted from person to the next, right? Firstly, and I guess the most common one is sexual fluids. STIs can live within your sexual fluids. It's not clear which ones do, but we know that a few, such as HIV, that is clear that it lives inside your sexual fluids and your blood. That moves me nicely into my next one, and that's blood, right? Blood is a very big carrier of sexually transmitted infections. So you need to watch out when you're getting tattoos, ladies and gentlemen. When you're getting tattoos, when you're sharing piercings with friends, if you're a heroin addict injecting on the side of the street, that's very likely to give you an STI. Next, we'll talk about cunnilingus, in other words, head. Head is not inherently dangerous, but if there's ulcerations or cuts in the mouth that leads to the blood, obviously STIs can move through that. Herpes can also move through the mucosa of the skin, so you need to be careful there. Next, we have anal transmission, right? The problem with anal transmission is it's not inherently bad. It's just when the anus is not prepared for penetration, it can cause tears. And these tears lead to the bloodstream, and that inherently causes the transmission of the STI. Lastly, we talk about, and in my opinion, the most important for this case is skin-to-skin transmission. This is a really big issue because a condom cannot protect against this, because your pubic area between you and your partner or partners can touch, and therefore a skin-to-skin transmitted infection can occur. Now, this is not all of them are skin-to-skin. That's only really syphilis and HPV that are skin-to-skin, and there are ways around this, so it's not the end of the world. Lastly, it's mother-to-child, right? Mother-to-child infections can occur, such as HIV passing from a mother to a child, but it's not a given. It's not 100%, and it can be treated against. So if you're working with your medical professional, then you should be fine. Let's talk about the modes of prevention, right? And I guess the most way we've all been told to prevent STIs is, like our grade 6 teacher, PE teacher who posed as our sex ed teacher was like, just don't have sex, just don't have sex, guys. And to me, that's just the most ridiculous way of teaching sexual education, because the whole notion of abstinence kind of falls flat because people don't prepare, right? Because I'm not going to have sex, so I'm not going to prepare, I'm not going to know my sexual health, I'm not going to have condoms on me. And that's a very, very toxic way of thinking, because suddenly you're at a party in first year and shawty a little baddie and she putting the fatty on you, and now you're drunk, so you're also not thinking straight, and that's how a lot of STIs transmit, especially through the youth. So it's very important that we educate ourselves on these issues, right? And really understand that preparation is key. I myself walk around with condoms in my bag, my school bag, when I'm on campus and that. I mean, you can never be too safe. That's what's really important. Next is the condom, right? The most common, the male and female condom. Now, female condoms are a bit harder to come by, but if you go to your Discam, your clicks, they will be there. And it's very important to understand that raw sex without a condom, is apparently addictive. So rather condomize and don't risk it. Don't take that risk. It's not necessary. Next, we have dental dams, right? Now, dental dams are things that you put in between you and the thing you're performing an action on. It's kind of like a condom, but that you can use for different areas of the body. If you want to give head, for example, and if you want to eat ass, you know what I'm saying, you can use a dental dam, right? And lastly, and in a way most importantly, we have PEPs, right? Now, these are post-exposure prophylaxis pills. Now, essentially, what it is if you might have been exposed to HIV and you're not sure, you can take PEPs, and it significantly decreases the chance of you contracting HIV. I think it is only HIV that they relate to, but I'll fact check that, probably put it down in the comments. That is PEPs, right? Post-exposure prophylaxis. Next, let's move quite swiftly into a few myths about STIs, right? The first one is quite major, is that condoms are 100% effective against STIs. This is not true. STIs can be transmitted through the mouth. STIs can be transmitted from pubic area to pubic area. And in fact, condoms are 98% likely to keep you safe and for you not to have a baby. 98%. The other 2% comes through education, through watching videos like this. So please, if you like this video, if you learned a lot, share this right now with a friend. Right now. Because you could be giving that person the 2% chance, that the 2% that is missing of that 100%. So it's very important to do that. Next, we have the fact that you can create your own virus or your own STI by having too many sexual interactions. That's not true, right? You can't create a virus between you and your partner. It's impossible. It just doesn't occur. I don't even know why that myth exists. Next, I'll be discussing the truths about STIs, right? Now, there are fundamental things that you need to know. The first is that the earlier you get treated, the better. If you are experiencing any of the symptoms I've discussed, if you are just by the slightest worried, get tested, guys. Get tested. This moves to my next truth, right? being tested is not wrong. There's no shame that should be attached to it. There is shame, sadly, within the world, but you have to weigh that shame against your life, man. And I think getting tested earlier is very beneficial, because you can actually stop a lot of STIs from getting too brutal and too invasive on your body, and evacuate them from your body the earlier you get treated. And lastly, and I guess most importantly to this video, there is life, there is sex after STIs, right? If you contract an STI, you're not done for life. It's not hopeless, ladies and gentlemen. We have to understand that a lot of STIs, including HIV, can be eradicated from one's body if done early enough, and if done properly by proper medical professionals, right? HIV can be reduced to a viral load that's below detectable, making you clinically free of the virus and unable to clinically pass it on to your partner even. So there is life after STIs, but what's important is we begin this early, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, give me a like. If you really found it helpful, help a friend and share this right now. And yeah, next videos are coming very, very soon. We will be doing this once a week. Oh, and on my YouTube channel, I will be releasing the prior video. So if you prefer to watch it there, you want to watch with family and friends, will be on my YouTube channel. Thank you very much. And yeah, hope you learned a lot and hope you enjoyed.